young students also. You can also tell what you. Okay, when I was thinking about science communication, first we should understand what is that we want to communicate. We get some ideas, and those ideas is what we do in the laboratories. This idea could be a passion, or it could be a curiosity of what we want to do. And these ideas, you start building prototypes, like the prototype which these kids have demonstrated. What an idea, and that idea is now getting transformed to a model. And now this model has to become a product. I think Pranik told there is a cloud which is available on Amazon. It's very costly, but probably we may have to get it. So you get an idea. The idea was to help the elderly or disabled, challenged people. Then the model has been made. Maybe it has been exhibited in a meeting, and you got some prize. Now you want to go to the product, and that's where it goes to the technology. But then when it goes to technology, it doesn't stop there. Somebody may say the glove can be a little lighter, or the glove can be more flexible. Then you have to go back to the laboratory and say how I can make this glove lighter, or how this glove can become more effective. I said some difficulty was there when you're pressing one. The way you touch your fingers need not be the same as the other person. So how do I accommodate this part of it? Then scientists research in the laboratory will do, and the cycle will continue. Otherwise, we will not get jobs. Suppose you do some research and get the product and stop it here. This is a cycle of science, engineering, and technology. But then, I think why should we do all these things? Is because, again, take the example they said, we need to help the elderly people who are there, who are challenged. And we also should do all these science and technology because we want our country to progress. And that is where, but then the main difficulty comes is, somehow in doing all this research, there's always a disconnect with the requirements of the society. We do very high-end research, but how much of it is useful to the society, or how much of it is we going to solve the problems? We went gaga about Chandrayaan-3 when the Vikram landed and Pragyan was roving on the moon. It was very exciting. But then just go to the roads of Bangalore and you will find the challenges which we have. I'm not saying, I'm also excited about Chandrayaan. I also written a blog on Chandrayaan. What I'm saying is, we seem to be disconnected with the requirement of the society. That is the responsibility of all of us when we do research. Now, we always have inquiry, like scientific inquiry. What is this? What is this curiosity is? It is to obtain knowledge. And in what form? You obtain the knowledge in the form of testable explanations that can be used to predict the results of the future experiment. That is what is scientific inquiry. If you like moon, that is your liking. The way you like moon need not be liked by me or the way other person. But whereas when you do some knowledge and do some experiments, it has to be in the form of a testable explanation and can be used to predict the results of a future experiment. And also to gain better understanding. Why do you want to have knowledge? Because you want to understand things in a better way, and it can be on a topic of your study. And but why do you want to use this knowledge? And use this knowledge to understand, to intervene its causal mechanisms. For example, he was showing you a picture of epilepsy. There was a slide which showed about it. And there you can see epilepsy. You can give all the data about epilepsy, but the reasons why epilepsy is coming can be find out, can we find solution. So this is where the knowledge or your inquiry is all about. And if I just have to say philosophy of science is you need to pose significant questions, especially the young children who are here and the research students who are pursuing here are students. We always should pose significant questions that can be investigated empirically. I can always ask questions, but then unless otherwise it can be investigated empirically, the question remains question. So I think we need to ask questions in such a way that they can be investigated, and you can link your research to theory and use methods that permit direct investigation of the question. You should always say that, how can I directly investigate the question? Provide a coherent and explicit chain of reasoning. Your reasoning should be explicit And it's not depend only between you and your friend. It should be you and with anybody who can do that. And more importantly in research is how to replicate and generalize across the studies. How do you replicate? If I do some experiment today, can it be replicated by others? That's what yesterday we were discussing for science and philosophy. In science, if you do something, whether you do or X do or Y does it, it has to be the same result. But philosophical thinking, it can change from person to person. So that's where you have to replicate your results. And of course, you also should be allowing professional scrutiny and critique. For example, if these kids want to show this, somebody should go and say, yes, what they have done is good. I think this is something which we have to do because they demonstrated. But if I want to use it, can I do it or not? They should be permitting that. Say, come and experiment. I'm sure when you conduct some science exhibition, they permit you to do yourself. Come and do experiment. So that's what you should permit them and say, well, come and do. Not that only 4 of you can do it, others. So this is what I call as a philosophy of science. Of course, we are always in a hurry to do things. I mean, in between, I thought I should pick up some cartoons from the leg so that we don't get bored. I think when we start inquiring, don't lose the context. That is important. It's possible that the solution to the problem may be next door, but I think you're only doing serious research and not taking care of that. Now, communication. I don't know how many of you, all of us perceive, feel, and arrive at conclusions when the information is made available to us. I don't know how many of you listen to old Hindi songs. I don't know many of the Kannada songs, I can't quote it. There's a very nice old Hindi song by Talat Mehmood. It says, I'm not a good singer, but I can just tell you those things. It says, Fir wahi sham, wahi gam, wahi tanhai. What does it mean? That's for translating English is, Fir wahi sham means, once again, that evening, wahi tanhai. Tanhai means separation. Why separation? And wahi sad, that same sadness. And everybody claps, or wow, they will say. You know why we say wow to that song? Actually, it's all about getting angry with that. If you are alone in the evening and you're alone and you're feeling sad. So we should all appreciate this poetry or we should condemn it. But we all will appreciate it because you connect to yourself with it on a nice evening. You're alone, thinking about somebody who is very close to you and missing that person. And the gum is for missing the person. Then you interpret if you're a young boy or a girl, you think about your boyfriend or girlfriend. Or if you're married, you look for wife, spouse, and then suddenly miss them and say, the poet has put all the thoughts. So why I'm telling this story is, all of us perceive, feel, and arrive at conclusions when the information is made available. Whenever we appreciate poetry, it is because the poet somehow resonates the thoughts which you have in your mind. That's why you will say wow, wow. And otherwise, I will not tell. Another very famous song recently came in a movie called Pushpa. It's very popular song, very popular with male men folk. But actually, if you listen to the literate is actually condemning the men. But then men appreciate it because it's just that what evokes in your mind is what matters. So this is where it is. So then the question is, creativity is in formalizing the thought process, either in verbal or in a written form, and communicating them to share and make others understand. This is the most important thing in science communication. You are communicating not because you want to give feedback. You are communicating to share your thoughts and also make others understand. And that is the crux of science communication. And when it comes to science, it adds another connotation of communication. So writing poetry, just like what I said about the Talat Mehmood song, the writing poetry or story writing. Actually, Koleyal Sharma will write so many. Srinaji writes a lot of poetry. Niranjan Prabhu writes poetry. Writing poetry and story writing involves giving form to the thought process and looking at a given situation with a different perspective. Luckily for us, if you are a science communicator, you don't have to write poetry. And because writing poetry is not an easy thing. Writing poetry requires a different skill. So luckily for us, in science communication, you need to communicate the observations you made or the inferences that are made. I'm sure this this figure which you must have seen number of times. It's the blind man's blind. There are some 6 blind people looking at the elephant. Why I said is that I just now told science communication or communication is giving words to the thought process. You are giving words to the thoughts that are coming. Just imagine if a blind person touches the elephant, depending upon what he perceives, he will describe the elephant. And that is very important for me in communication, because you are communicating what you perceive. And that is where the challenge comes in science communication. If I look at moon and say, moon is very beautiful, it looks so beautiful. If you say, it's your opinion. But how moon is there cannot be different from multiple person. But I'm sure if it's very scientific and you appreciate your wife or your spouse as your face is as beautiful as moon, she may get offended because you've seen when Pragyan is roaming around on the moon, you know how the moon surface is not about. But the question is, let us not be too scientific when it comes to appreciation. But what I'm trying to convey to people is that your understanding is important. In communication, you are conveying what you understand out of the situation given to you. And that's why you have to have an overall picture, not alone your idea. And that is the important part of it. So science communication is the expression of analysis of the formation of information and arriving at conclusion based on verifiable results. Again, I tell you, the moon is beautiful if you say, or I like rose is beautiful, or jasmine is beautiful. It has got no meaning, because you may like rose and I may like jasmine. So then how do I prove it? How do we start fighting which is more beautiful? So what is important is that in science communication, it is an expression of analysis of the information and arriving at conclusion based on verifiable results. If you tell me Hampi is a hot weather, that means I will have the statistics to say Hampi's average temperature is 34 degrees. That is where verifiable results. Hampi is a nice place and it's got no meaning in science communication. It is important that nice place definition has to be there. So it has to be a verifiable conclusions based on verifiable results. I think that's what is important in science communication. Of course, many times learning process is based on tacit knowledge. I'm sure Kollegal Sharma was not formally taught how to communicate, nor Sridhar learned, nor Niranjana taught them and how to write poetry. Many times we learn things in a passive way. Same thing is applicable to science. I went to one university and a lot of faculty members were there. I asked them, how many of you have become faculty because you want to become faculty? Maybe half of their hands were risen. Then the next question is that how many of you are trained to be teachers? And 0 hands were raised, because we are not formally trained to do things. That is same for science communication. That is, but many of us are successful in communicating. That is because you somehow learn by passive way of understanding things. Or follow the peers. You listen to some peers, then learn from them, oh, maybe I should talk like this, or maybe I should present like this. But it is always advantageous if the process of getting trained is formalized. And that's where workshops like this are very useful, that you get trained formally how to communicate science. And unfortunately, not many places the formalizing of learning of communication is happening. I do not know, BT College has a communication to teach. I have to ask him after during the break. So why should we talk about writing? There's so much of writing, why are we talking about? All of us are literate, so all literates can write. Strictly speaking, if you know ABCD, you should be able to write. But why are we talking about writing? All of us can sing, right? We all can sing. The question is, who will listen? Writing is for communication. The challenge is, who will read it? That is what the challenge about. Can we get readers? And hence, I would say writing is skill. Good writing is art. More so when it comes to scientific communication or technical writing. It is a real challenge. There may be those who are born or gifted writers. Some of us are born with some talent. Others have to learn and practice, especially those of the PhD students sitting here. When you write your PhD thesis, it is a struggle. Don't wait for this till you complete your experiments. Start doing from the day one. How do I communicate it? So others have to learn and practice. And learning is by attending to things like learning, taking some courses, talking to people, attending workshops. So how do I write? How do I learn writing? So find a topic. It can be on your own topic you can find, or somebody will assign a topic to you and say, okay, you write on this topic. When you want to write a topic, whether you have chosen or somebody has given, you need to collect the background information. I saw that the slide on the epilepsy. You have to collect information. You have to collect. How do you collect information? You have to read about that. Ask questions. Why am I writing about this topic? What is special about it? And then listen carefully when you are talking to people. Make notes. I hope some of you make notes of listening to me. And check facts carefully. There was a statistic saying that 1 in 24 people are epileptic. You have to check the facts. In the era of digital world, everything is available. You need to verify whether the result information which you are getting is correct or not. So you have to check your facts carefully. Write freely. And then read loud. Listen to the sounds. I don't know if you experimented this or not. When you read what you have written, you pause if it's not okay. When you're writing, you will not pause. When you read, when you say read, means read loud. And even if nobody is there, you read for yourself. When you read loud, when there's a mistake, you suddenly pause. That means that is an advantage of reading loud, especially the kids. You should do this when you write. And then sometimes grammar and punctuations are a challenge. Learn from your mistakes. Nowadays, a lot of tools which are available on the internet to correct your English, correct your language. Learn from the mistakes. It's not every time you run the software and say how many times you can correct it. So read indiscriminately and study styles. When I was young, a researcher like you people, there was no internet. It's very difficult to get a journal paper. If I want a journal paper, it takes 6 months. I go to the library, fill up a card, and then post it. And after 6 months, if the author is kind enough, he will send it. Nowadays, you download within no time. If nothing is available, you have some black cloud or whatever it is there. So, but the question is, even if you get there, what is important is read indiscriminate. Read it. Keep on reading your papers in your domain. But then, when you're reading, understand the style in which the author is reading. And this is something what is, and ultimately, Professor Balram says, writing can be difficult. Now you are telling to me, sir, you want me to be a communicator and you give me so much of homework to be done. Yes, writing can be difficult. And it is so, but you have to go through the difficult process. And it's very ironical. I'm sure that when you write poetry or when you write something for an article, the writer is someone who spends a lifetime in solitude alone. And I'm sure that when you are at home and you want to write something, your wife will not like to, you'll have to have your spouse with you. You'll say, leave me alone, you would say. So this is ironical that if you want to write for others, but you spend your lifetime in solitude. So effective science communication is, it has to be objective, clear, concise, and convincing. The style should be descriptive and quantitative. It should include details and use of facts, data, measurement, and statistics. And what they call as use of power, you have to plan, organize, write, edit, and revise. Never you should do only one time and post it. So nowadays, the social media posting so promptly be posted. So please revise after you written your article. That's very important. So what are the modes of communication? What is oral communication, which I'm doing, communicating with you, or sometimes you have written communication. And there's another important component in communication, what I'm calling as non-verbal communication. Actions, gestures, facial expressions. When you meet people, you would also see at the face and find out whether they're paying attention to you or not. So you have to pay attention to non-verbal communication. And it's a very powerful means of transmitting messages. If you're sitting, I can find out and see, are you bored or are you just listening to me because you're compelled to be here waiting for the lunch part? Other thing is active listening. Whenever you are in a meeting, when you are even in a discussion with people, you have to make sense of what is being shared, and sometimes you have to pay attention to what has not been told. And many times you go to somebody says you are very good, you say you're very good. The very good has got a lot of meanings and very good. How do you tell the very good? What's your facial expression? So you have to pay attention to what I'm calling as what is not being spoken. But Peter Drucker says the most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. And that's very important when in the communication. Now the question is, who are the stakeholders in communication? The science communication is to whom and by whom. If it is for students, the purpose is learning. Why do teachers teach the students? Because the students have to learn. If you're a researcher, because you have to get new inventions in your research. If it is an industry, it is for development. And if the government is which is communicating every day, you see newspaper, somebody was lamenting in the morning, so many advertisements are there, and that's not because government want to reach out to the people. That is for welfare of the society. Government will say these are all things I'm doing. So there are different connotations for communication, depending on what purpose we have to do.